Okay, well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I think the place I'd like to start is on the topic of homelessness, which is obviously one that is very important to you. You've written a lot about it on your campaign website, and you have some family experience with it. And I'm wondering if you could share with us what your primary priority is as a state legislature in trying to bring some more progress to addressing the problem.
Okay, so the issue of homelessness is actually a very personal issue to me. And it is personal to me because when I see a homeless person, I know that it could be any one of us. And when I see a homeless person, I think it could be a mom, a dad, somebody's aunt, somebody's uncle. And in my case, Bill, it's my son. My son has been homeless. And he deals with addiction, and he deals with mental health issues. And when those issues bring you down, they bring you all the way down. When people are living and dying on the streets, it cannot be okay. So when I get to Sacramento, it's going to be a high priority. It was my call for action. And I'm going to tell you that I came in a little bit late to the race with the other 5 Dems that are running. And because this issue of homelessness being so personal to me, I did not want to cause any pain or embarrassment to my family. My family was on board, and I called my son. And I told him how I was feeling about the situation and how, as a mother, I felt this need, this call for action. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of tears, and there was a long conversation. And at the end of the conversation, as we were ready to hang up, he said to me, "Mom." "What, Mark?" He said, "Thank you." So I knew I was doing the right thing. And the story's painful to tell, but it's also a relief. Because if I can help, if I could take this to Sacramento and help homeless people get off the street, I feel relieved. I feel a purpose. So that is one of the main reasons why I've raised my hand and decided to take this to Sacramento.
As you well know, Governor Newsom has made this topic, this problem, a priority.
Yes.
Do you think he's moving in the right direction? And how do you feel about state mandates of local communities to address the problem?
I believe that two-part question here. I'm grateful that it's being addressed, and I'm grateful that it's a priority for the governor. I'm not so sure that it's the problem of the local municipalities to be punished for the situation. I know that homeless people, I live in Millbrae, and we're the last end of BART. And I know that those are not Millbraeans. Those are people that came from and off BART. Yet they're people. And these people need to be taken care of. I don't really think that it's Millbrae's problem or Millbrae has the solution. I think this needs to be a statewide solution and address it together, not isolate the blame to the local people.
The commission that Newsom has appointed, the Steinberg Commission, is recommending that each city be required to provide some sort of services for the homeless, whether they be shelters or potentially safe parking facilities. And I think the intent is to not have it be a burden of just a few cities that have more resources to be able to deal with it or the desire to deal with it. So I guess what I'm asking, and I understand Millbrae has some unique qualities because of the BART station there, but would you, if something could be developed that did require cities to take this action with state funding in an attempt to spread the responsibility across a region like the Bay Area, would that be something you would support as a legislator, or is that imposing too big a burden, in your opinion, on local government?
Without digging into the dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's, absolutely, I would support something of that sort. I know that the mayor in Sacramento is doing like wonders. And obviously I've made a few trips to Sacramento in the last few months, and I was just appalled, and it was devastating to see the homeless people just in the middle of the park, in the middle of our beautiful capital. And since I have been making trips, I have noticed that there is, it looks like some sort of refinement to the situation, and I'd like to dig in deeper to see what he's doing, and you know, we don't all have to invent the solution. We all need to come together, and as a state, like you said, as a state with resources, take care of this problem.
Is Millbrae doing anything in particular with safe parking or other programs to support them?
We have just developed a subcommittee for homeless, and I'm very grateful to be part of that. And we are working with BART, and we are working with our sheriffs, and we're working with the nonprofits that seems to be, they are the experts dealing with this situation. But as far as safe parking, that has not been addressed yet.
I think every time we talk about the homeless, people recognize that there are many different reasons that people end up homeless. There's different subsets, I guess you would say, of people. Specifically for those who have mental illness and substance addiction, are there any particular solutions that you think really need to be implemented sort of in full in order to help that particular population?
Well, in general, because everybody's particular,
Different,
right?
Yeah.
And they all, everybody has customized needs, but it's an illness. And people need to be cared for when they're ill. So if in fact we could look at that situation of addiction and mental health issue, homeless people, yes, they need to be taken care of as an illness. You know, teachers living in cars, that's a housing issue. But addiction and mental health issues on the street, people living on the street, that's a care and shelter need that is need from a professional.
Yeah. Some cities have housing first programs, so you can get those people in somewhere safe to stabilize them. Is that something that you favor?
Yes, and I would think that if we had room to house these people, they should take the housing that is provided. That's something that nobody should be living on the street.
What is your position on SB 50, both in its original form when it was introduced last year and as it currently stands? And obviously related to that, to what extent do you believe state government should be imposing requirements that relate to zoning on local communities?
So I don't support SB 50, and I don't support it with its revisions as it stands today. I think that we live in a district that is well, it's pretty colorful, right? We could go from one city to the next, and everybody is very customized in their ability to have their fortes or their benefits, and I think that it should keep it that way. Every local jurisdiction has a purpose for zoning, and they should be able to say where in fact housing or multi-use housing or height restrictions should remain.
So are you saying that there's no role for the state to play with regards to incentivizing or requiring more housing development?
It's two different questions.
Right.
Incentivizing, that makes all the sense in the world. But requiring, no, I don't believe that that's something that we should do with SB 50.
Is that the position of the Millbrae City Council as well?
You mean the majority?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
You haven't, as a council, taken a position on SB 50?
We are not supporting it.
Okay.
One of the drivers.
I don't want to speak for everybody, though.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. One of the drivers of the housing shortage is, of course, there's a lot of jobs and people need to get from wherever they are to those jobs. Do you think that there's a role that the state should play with regards to technology companies, big companies that are creating these jobs? that there should be some sort of linkage between if you create a job, then you need to provide housing.
No, I think you'll find another candidate that has that idea. I think that it's definitely related, the housing and transportation, because we really can't talk about housing unless we talk about transportation. And with that being said, I believe that there are so many alternatives and ideas that are on the outside, not necessarily on the inside of Sacramento right now, that need to be addressed. And I'll give you an example. I have a good friend up in the north part of the district who has a wonderful business, and he employs a lot of hardworking, blue-collar workers that live out of the area and commute hours to work. And so he got together with a group of his people, and they put together a plan of which he could go from where he's at in San Bruno to Pittsburgh and Tracy in 45 minutes. And he has people that would buy into this, help fund it. It would be a public-private idea that could be funded public and privately. And he could get his waiters, his cooks, his dealers, his janitors, all of which has made his business a great success. And I think that outside of that box, it's not just the big techies that need to buy into this, it's everybody that needs these people. So if everybody could pitch in, absolutely, and I think the ideas are out there and we just have to bring them to fruition.
So is his idea that he has like a shuttle or something that's going?
No, it's a train. It's a train. Yeah,
okay.
It's 45 minutes, which is great because there's plenty of housing in Pittsburgh and Tracy that might be affordable for his type workers on their salary. So I think that all those great ideas need to come to play. And it's not just the south end of the district that has the traffic issues. It's everywhere. We are strangled by our traffic.
Well, so getting back to Jocelyn's original question, do you believe that there should be a relationship between commercial development being approved and corresponding housing that will be needed by those employees being approved at the same time?
Yeah,
should
and I
this
think
be linked?
Yeah, of course they're linked, and their relationship is very important for both sides of that, of everybody. And I think that impact fees and such are already in place where they can play a greater role and come up with solutions. You know, some people don't want to live next to their job. Some people want to live outside their job. So I think that the choices should be fair choices, and everybody that is building a business and wants to play into the community needs to participate in all aspects of the community, and that would include housing and transportation.
But you say they're linked, but you're not saying that you would require the housing be built.
No. I would not say I would require anything.
Their impacts are obviously linked.
Yeah.
So how do you handle a situation where Facebook hires tens of thousands of employees and commits to building a few hundred to 1,000 housing units for those employees, obviously making both the transportation and the affordability of housing even more serious a problem?
Yeah, I think Facebook takes a hard hit on this whole topic, you know, and
they deserve it.
Yeah, okay, maybe, but you know, when our economy was, you know, in trouble, and we needed people like Facebook to come in, we probably just didn't plan. So now we just have to. Now we have the jobs. Now we need the housing, and we need to better our transportation. Infrastructure should have always been designed to create a good economy. And we've kind of failed on it. This is not a new problem. Housing and transportation is not a new problem.
No.
And Facebook's relatively new. So to burden them, Facebook is always the company that gets harped on when we talk about the transportation and housing. Yes. Should they participate? Yes. And do they? Yes. Is it enough? Probably not. We're not solved yet. But I would look to solutions instead of mandates. Let's get to the table. Let's negotiate. Let's see what
But it has been a problem for a long time, as you point out, and nothing has been put in place that has corrected that problem. Well, it's only gotten worse.
I think that we are working on it, and I think there's a lot of good things on the horizon. And the Dumbarton Bridge, we have the toll on 101. We're working on our electric trains. There's a lot of good things that are coming into. Not enough, possibly, but yet let's build on what we have.
All right, let's talk about another quality of life issue, and that has to do with crime. I'm not sure what's going on in Millbrae, but here in Palo Alto, some neighborhoods are victimized by auto burglary rings and lots of break-ins. And some people attribute the rise in those types of crimes to Prop 47 and the making of felonies into misdemeanors. What is your thought on an initiative that's been proposed for the November ballot, the California Criminal Sentencing Initiative, that would make some of those changes because of Prop 47, roll them back a bit to address some of these?
Yeah, you do the crime and you need to pay the price. I mean, it's something that is just a given. I'd like to revert back to the people that are causing the crimes.
Okay.
And again, I think that drug addictions and mental health issues play a huge part in all of this. And if we could address that issue, I think we might see a change in the statistics to what you've just talked about. A little bit, I'm going to touch a little bit on early education and mental health issues and drug addiction. And I've been very fortunate to have conversations with a lot of the nonprofits that are kind of engaged with my position here for the Senate race. And their research brings addictions and mental health issues back to as early as 7 years old. And if you want to talk about crime and the crime of break-ins, car break-ins, and what you just described that's happening a lot in Palo Alto, as along in the rest of the district as it's seen, it has to do a lot with addiction and the trauma that has come about in these young people's lives. So I think that if you do the crime, you have to pay the price. But we got to figure out, what is the cause of this? Why are these people in addictions and living on our streets?
Do you think there's a funding problem when it comes to a lack of solutions or services for these populations?
Well, definitely budget. I want to know if, funding is, money's not the answer to everything.
Okay.
I mean, it makes a quick fix for a lot of things, no doubt, and it's certainly nice to have. But I think the budgeting too, I think that we have to make sure that we budget the money so it gets to where it gets needed. And how it gets watered down it's sad. I mean, when people are needing the funding for care and shelters, and it takes so long for that dollar to become, it takes such a short period for that dollar to become a quarter, right? And I think that the budgeting would be something to look at more than the actual, more funding.
Okay, so where the money is allotted, at what level?
And how it's distributed.
Okay. All right.
I want to ask you about AB 5, which is organized labor's attempt to curtail independent contractors and
Yes.
to rein in that gig economy that has developed. Did you support the legislation that was passed to deal with that court decision?
I did support that. I supported it with for the workers. I'm not so sure it's going to play right with them. I'm seeing that there's a lot of maybe we should have listened to the drivers and listened to what their wants and needs were a little bit louder. I work as an independent contractor myself. My industry was exempt from that. And I understand the benefits of it, and I understand the structure of it and how it works in our industry.
Your industry being real estate.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure that the drivers were so satisfied with the outcome of it. We maybe should have listened to their wants and needs a little bit greater. But I understand protections, and that's where I can see where the unions were strong, and I would support that as well.
So you would be in favor of reopening that legislation to address
that? Reopening it, or I would to relook at it and maybe make a better perfection to it, I would consider that.
Okay.
So we should touch upon PG&E and the mess that's happening there with infrastructure and power shutoffs, et cetera. What's your take on what needs to happen with PG&E and if the state should get involved in some way that it's not already?
So I think I already said you do the crime, you pay the price, right? So I was born and raised in San Bruno, California. I work out of San Bruno, California, and my mother lives about 4 blocks from where the explosion was. And in that explosion, there were 3 agents in our office that were displaced because their house was in the neighborhood. And I actually went to school, a childhood friend I went to school with that lost their life. So I don't have a real good sense of faith in PG&E. It's unforgivable to what we've experienced in our neighborhood where I was born and raised. And God forbid it happens anywhere else. I'd like to look at the regulations and who's regulating PG&E, because to just disassemble something and let them kind of go away, I don't think is the answer. And I think that we'll all pay the price. But there definitely needs to, the structure and the regulators need to be more, we need to look at that and definitely better. It's going to take some time, I understand that, and we have to be patient, which is very difficult to do. But we have to be careful what we wish for as well. Yeah. And I have been a follower of that explosion in San Bruno since the moment it happened. I never forget that day.
Yeah. Some people toss around the idea of maybe having smaller regional utilities. That perhaps that would strengthen the areas, and so there isn't so much on the shoulders of one utility.
Sure, I'd be open to any of those ideas, but first and foremost, we have what we have, and we need to make it right. It's as right as we can make it. So I don't want to disassemble without having a plan in place.
Sure. Yeah. Are you also in favor of a state mandate that future construction would be built for all electric and not natural gas?
Yes.
You are?
Yeah, that's what we have a future to our next generation we have to leave. We have to leave. I mean, climate change is a very serious subject, and I certainly don't claim to be an expert in it by any means, but definitely I'll leave that to the experts to say that this is a step in the right direction, and I would fully support that.
Is Millbrae among the cities that have taken action in this area?
We haven't taken full action on it, but I would imagine there you might find 100% 5-0 vote on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to ask you about the implementation of the cannabis legalization in California. It's not gone particularly well for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. One of them is the high level of taxation that's being imposed on the legal cannabis operators, and the fact that you can get marijuana cheaper on the black market than you can on the legal market. Would you favor reducing those taxes, or do you have some other ideas as to how to kind of get this to where the voters had intended it to be when they passed proposition?
I know it exists, and I mean, it's a reality. I'm the generation that was raised on it, pretty much. But I was not in favor of legalizing marijuana. I didn't anticipate whether the taxes were going to be greater or less. You got to remember where I come from. I come from raising a child where substance abuse is an issue in my home. I can't support anything that might harm somebody in the future. So it came to Millbrae City Council, and they wanted to know if we would allow for dispensaries and such, and I did not vote for that. So it's another.
Well, as a state legislator, however, you're going to need to address this issue. The state is trying to implement the law,
Right.
and it's having trouble doing that. So
Yeah, I mean,
no specific ideas as to how
no
that.
specific ideas on that.
Okay.
But tax like in everything else, so.
So one of the big problems that the state and local governments are grappling with are unfunded pension liabilities and retiree health costs. So the state has moved to start trying to defray that, but is it, in your opinion, moving fast enough, or are we shackling our children and children's children with?
We were shackled, right? So
The shackling is passing
the
down.
shackling is passing down. We were shackled. We're dealing with it though. We're doing a pretty good job on it, and I will continue to make sure that that is a priority, so that as soon as we can, it's going to be no greater feeling than to get out of debt, right? And absolutely, we have to address that. It's just something that comes with the territory, and we signed up for it, and we'll get out of it.
Yeah. Is Millbrae struggling with that?
Yes, we were struggling, and we moved things around and made some advancements on it, and very proud of what we've done in Millbrae with that. We have a ways to go too. So,
Would you support using some of the budget surplus to pay down the school pension liabilities?
Yes, I would support that.
And I assume you're supporting Proposition 13, the new one?
I am not supporting Proposition 13.
Okay, tell us why not.
With regards
For
to
the benefit of our viewers, that's the $15 billion school facilities bond measure.
Yeah, it's not the $15 billion only schools facility bond. It has to do with the backbone of our economy and our small business people. And if in fact split roll is passed, the commercial and retail buildings will be reassessed, and the property taxes will go up, and it will go into a fund that will trickle down into our schools. Yet, who's going to get hurt by this idea of raising taxes with the commercial buildings are the small businesses. Now, hairdressers, realtors, ice cream parlors, taco or restaurants, those rents are going to go up to cover the costs of those commercial buildings. Now, there's a huge amount of cheaters in the commercial building and retail facility that we need to close that loophole to. And I am not going to congratulate the cheaters, and I am not going to allow them to continue. So let's look at what's being done incorrectly and focus on those people, and not pass something like the split roll that's going to burden the small business people that are the backbone of our economy.
Okay, just for clarification, Prop 13 is the bond measure, the school facilities bond measure, and you're addressing the split roll.
The revision of Prop 13.
Right. So
Right.
we're talking about two different things here.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that it's clear that the Prop 13 that's on the March ballot
Okay, I'm sorry. I
is
thought we
a
were talking
$15
about
billion school facilities bond.
the facilities bond.
And you thought I was talking about
The revision
the
of-
revisions to Prop 13,
I
which we were going to ask you about anyway.
So I answered it.
But you are
facilities bond.
supporting
Yes.
new Proposition 13 on the March
Correct.
ballot.
I apologize for that.
No, I just want to make sure that it's clear.
Do we get to edit that?
No, we just
But not
made
the
it clear.
split roll, just to make sure.
Right.
You're not supporting the split roll.
No.
Yes.
So I made that perfectly clear.
Okay,
Yes.
good. When it comes to affordable health care, Newsom has proposed an idea that the state should get involved with manufacturing generic drugs to be determined what exactly those are. Do you think that will work? Is that something that you
I think it's a step in the right direction. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. I probably shouldn't speak on that with being an expert, and I'd have to do some more research into it, but I think it's a step in the right direction from what I do know.
Okay. And kind of related, the idea of Medi-Cal for undocumented residents who are aging, is that something that you favor or don't favor?
Undocumented, yes, we need to take care of everybody that hurts needs to be cared for. I mean, it just goes on.
Whether they're old or not.
Yeah,
is what-
yeah,
okay,
exactly.
wow.
Yeah.
Middle-aged too.
Yeah, I'm going to be 60 next week.
Happy birthday.
Is that old?
No.
Not in my opinion. I want to ask you about climate change briefly, and primarily whether you would support a carbon tax in California, or what other modifications to the cap and trade program would you advocate?
I'd have to see where it was going to go, and I'd have to know exactly where the carbon tax was going, what it was going to facilitate, and regards to what is it going to do for climate change. I'm very involved, and I take it very serious. We're surrounded by the ocean and the bay in this district, and of course we have the ocean the whole side. But this is a very, very, very important issue to our district, and the quicker we resolve it, the less we'll have to spend. So with regards to money or dollars that would go towards getting this done and resolved quicker is probably something that I would be for. But as far as, where is it going to go, I'm not sure where they're allocating these funds to, and I'd like to have more knowledge to that.
Would you support increased nuclear power?
Would I support, excuse me?
Would you support increasing the role of nuclear power as a climate change strategy?
I don't feel like I would be able to answer that. I'm not sure if I...
Okay. Governor Newsom has pulled back from Brown's proposal to create these two tunnels to move water from Northern California to Southern California and parts in between.
Yes.
And is now proposing a smaller sized tunnel project.
One tunnel?
Yeah. And do you have a view on that? Are you
I think I would support Governor Newsom's one tunnel solution or proposal.
And you have confidence that the environmental concerns about the Delta can be remedied or taken care of?
I'm confident, yes.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I want to go back and talk about homelessness and mentally ill folks. Because I understand that there's some ideas about changing the 1967 Lanterman Act, in which there's rules about when people can be put into conservatorship or what have you. Is that an issue that you've thought about and have a stance on?
Yes.
Okay.
I would support that. I think that when people are sick, they need care. And with the experiences that I've had, there are a lot of homeless people that are mentally ill that don't take the care. And there comes a point where we need to take care of our people. So I would step up and say that these people need to be hospitalized, and they need to take the care. And they shouldn't be on the street unless they're well.
All right.
I think that's a good place to end it. We started there and we'll end there. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.